James Gailliard Show on Choice FM. Here's what you missed.
See, I thought initially the concern was just the damage of young minds, but it's really national security. The company that owns TikTok is ByteDance, B-Y-T-E Dance. Think about it. They have all this user data. I mean, it's crazy popular. They have all this information on people, right? They can run algorithms. They can do all this. So they're saying that if the Chinese government asked ByteDance, who was the owner of TikTok, to provide the U.S. data, then if ByteDance gives the Chinese government our data, then they can begin pushing propaganda using their algorithms, and they can wind up influencing elections and all that good stuff.
The James Gailliard Show, Mondays at 5 on Choice.
This is
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn Up.
Choice FM. The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
My people, good afternoon. This is James Gailliard. Welcome to the James Gailliard Show. I have to tell you, I love being with you every Monday from 5 to 6. Shout out to Choice FM, 92.1 FM on the dial. If you're on the radio, Durham, Raleigh, Roanoke Rapids, Scotland Neck, Tarboro, Wilson, Rocky Mount. Man, if you are on the radio, find a way this week to let me know, hey, I heard the show on the radio. I love to know that you're out there on the People Station. Y'all, this is where I talk about the things that we need to be talking about. I want to talk about the things that make us think. I want to talk about the things that make us think. I want to talk about two areas that we always get told. I mean, I like to talk sports. I probably won't do any sports today. We talk some sports sometimes. We talk news. We talk things in pop culture. But two things we talk about in every show. Two things we talk about in every show, and that is politics and religion. The two things that from childhood we've been taught we ought not talk about. Think about it. Religion is going to get me out of here to a better place one day, and politics is going to get me around here to a better place one day. And so, hey, don't talk about the two things that are going to make your life better. Let me help y'all for a moment. I think part of the reason, and listen, share this with somebody, and share this with somebody. I love to take your calls. If you want to talk to me, if you got to ask me a question that's real pressing, or you disagree with me, I'm not afraid to hear what you have to say. In the 919-872-9210, and in the 252-937-7400. Let me help you. Let me define something for you real quick. Let's not say it's politics, because I think as soon as people say politics, people get all all upset, all wound up. Call it public policy. Whether you call it politics or call it public policy, it invades and it intersects with every area of my life and your life. Let's dumb this thing way down. And when I say dumb it way down, hear me. I'm not saying that any of us are dumb. I'm saying I want to put it to a place. I think Joe Madison used to talk about this, and he used to talk about putting it where the goats can get it. I think that's a Joe Madisonism. He says, put it where the goats can get it. In other words, put it down way low so everybody can eat. That's actually how I preach, y'all. I like to kind of preach down where everybody can get it. So, my folk with PhDs and masters and bachelors and all that, they can reach down and get it. But my folk that, are younger and their mind is still developing, they don't quite have the level of educational attainment, they can grab it too. Everybody gets to eat. That's a good word right there. Everybody gets to eat. And so let me dumb it down. Let me tell you, when you hear someone say something about public policy or politics, let me tell you what they're talking about. They're talking about the distribution of resources. That's all it is. I want to say that again. The distribution of resources. So when a person says, I don't do politics, what they're saying is, I don't want to have any influence in how resources get distributed. I don't care about resources being distributed in my community. I don't care about resources being distributed in my school. I don't care about resources being distributed in my hospital system. I don't care about I don't care about the money. I don't care how the resources are distributed. I don't know anyone that feels that way. So because of that, we need to engage in conversations around religion and around public policy. And that's what we do on the James Gailliard Show. So share this with somebody. Today, I've got 3 or 4 segments that I want to unpack, that I want to spend some time with it. We always take one break, 25 after the hour, another one at 55 after the hour. So just 2 quick little commercial breaks when the time comes. But for the most part, it's all talk, all right? So if you've been with me for a while, you know segment 1. And I'll check you out on Facebook and other platforms, and I'll start to answer and see your questions and all that good stuff. Our first segment every week is what I call, they said what? And they said what is just, what did your preacher talk about? Like, what did your man or woman of God talk about? Because I'm a person of faith. I'm a pastor, but I'm also a person of faith. And because of that, I want to talk about, you know, what other people are, what you're hearing in church. And so I'm not going to get into all the details of my sermon, but what I do want to do is I want to speak something out to you. And what I want to speak out to you is, I was challenging our congregation to not allow the lesser things to overshadow the greater things. And that's what I want to encourage you about. Don't allow the lesser things in your life to overshadow the greater things. I think sometimes we get caught up, as you've heard people say, we focus heavily on the minors and we should be focusing on the majors, and we give it so much attention. And so I'm trying to make sure y'all are out there on social media. I don't see a broadcast link going out. So hopefully you guys are all out there, because I want to engage with you and I want to interact with you. And so I want to encourage you not to allow the lesser things of whether it is tradition. And I'm not saying tradition is not important, or criticism. I think sometimes we get so criticized by people that the meaningful things that we could do. I want to encourage somebody, you know, if you're being criticized, it must be because you're doing something. The only people I know that are never being criticized are the people that are never doing anything. And so if you are doing something, you're going to be criticized. You know, and I want to encourage you to not allow those smaller things. The bigger thing in life are the things that God has called you to do, the things that you ought to be pursuing. And I want to encourage you to focus on those bigger things. And so I just want to throw that out. I'm in a series on the book of Galatians at our church, Word Tabernacle. I want to shout out everybody from Word Tabernacle Church and everybody from our faith community and people from other faith communities. I'm glad you're watching. I'm glad you're with us. I'm excited that you are part of our show today. And so I want to jump in my second segment real quick. Just a quick little talk about, you know, the second segment I do is since we were together last, you know, what happened from last week to this week. And I just want to mention something. I was, first of all, I celebrated my 24th anniversary as a pastor. And so I'm grateful to God for that. I can't believe I've been doing this work 24 years. And our church did such an awesome job celebrating me. And I'm grateful for everyone and for their efforts and everything that they did to kind of make me feel appreciated during that time. So thank y'all very much for that. It means so much to me that you were able to do that and that you did that. And so, but after my celebration, my pastoral celebration, and I went on a road trip. And so I wound up going from Chicago to Philadelphia, and I spent some time with some of my elders, my father in the ministry and my brother. My brother, Barry, I don't know if he's listening today or watching, but my brother is 14 years older than me. So in addition to being my brother, he's really been a role model and a mentor. You know, he's been more than a friend. He's very much a friend. And he's been an amazing big brother. But being 14 years older than me, he was able to give me exposure to things that I ordinarily would not have had. And I think it helped to a small degree kind of develop me into the man that I'm becoming. And so one of the things, I wrote down some categories, and I want to give you this as homework before we jump into our main segments about news and what's going on in public policy. But I want to encourage you to get with people that can do 2 things. First of all, get with an elder. That's number 1. Get with an elder that can tutor you, that can mentor you, that can develop you, that can hold you accountable. And here I wrote down, I think I want to say these are 8 or 9 areas. First of all, spiritually. You know, having somebody in my life that can develop me, mentor me, teach me. I think that's part of the reason why you need to be a part of a church, is because we need people in our life that can help develop us spiritually. And someone that can help me relationally is the second one. in terms of how do I navigate my close relationships with my children or spouses or siblings or whatever the case is, the people in my life that really matter most, your parents, and making sure that those relationships are not fractured. Number 3, financially. I want to, we're going to talk entire segments about finances on this show, but I just want to really encourage us of the importance of working diligently. And I'm going to talk about work in our next segment in just a minute, because I was blown away by this new report that is out. And I was like, what in the world is this about? And so we're going to talk about it in a second. But, just someone that can hold me accountable in terms of how I spend my money so that I'm not wasting it. I'm not spending it foolishly. I'm making sure that I'm investing it. How many out? Let me shout people out today. How many of you have an IRA? How many of you have a 401k or a 403b with your company? Do you have a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA? Like, we need to talk about, we need to talk about money stuff, because I think a lot of times we don't, and then people, listen, I'm a pastor, and this is just real talk. It's not always the case, but a lot of times, we see pastors that, are in their pulpits pastoring for this crazy length of time. And again, it's not always the case, but in many situations, it is the case that they are still pastoring for such a long period of time because they've just not financially prepared themselves to be able to retire. And I want to encourage all of us that whatever your lot in life is, I want to encourage you to be ready and be prepared to retire. And so, having conversations about our finances and how we manage our money and how we spend our money and how we invest our money, I think is so pivotal, and I want to encourage us about that. We need people in our life that can help us. I don't know about you, but for me, I wasn't taught money management growing up. And so it's an area that I had to struggle with as an adult. And I want to make sure that, and I want to encourage pastors who may be listening to me that, sometimes in our sermons, we need to have more applicable, practical kind of illustrations around these kinds of things. I mean, it's great that people are going to heaven, but we don't want them living and struggling until they get there. And so financially, then socially, like what am I doing with my time? Who am I running with? Who am I spending my time with? Are they healthy relationships? Are they toxic relationships? Are they reciprocal relationships? I think are so key. And then someone to hold me accountable emotionally, right? Having an elder that I can talk to about emotional issues, or not even an elder. It could just be a person that I trust, right? And so emotionally, and then physically, am I taking care of my physical health? This is something that, like, I say this, I might say what I'm about to say more than any other statement on my show. And if you're just tuning in, this is James Gailliard, and you are listening and or watching the James Gailliard Show right here on Choice 92.1 FM. It's the People's Station. In the 919, I can be reached at 872-9210. In the 252, I can be reached at 937-7400. It's Monday, April 29th, the year of our Lord 2024. I'm talking politics, culture, news, sports, religion, anything that's going to get me thinking. And today we're talking about the importance of having people in our life that are elders, people that are older, that can develop me in certain areas of our life. And so we're talking about the importance of someone developing me physically, at least holding me accountable, asking me the hard questions about how am I taking care of my body. I say this on almost every show, but it's true on every show. And that is, it just does not matter how well educated, how well intended you are, how much you love a person, how much you love what you do. It just does not matter if we are not healthy enough, or we're dead, if we're not healthy enough to be able to execute. There is nothing more important for us on earth than to take care of our physical health and our emotional health. And so I want to really encourage you about that, making sure you're doing all the things necessary to take care of, and having somebody hold you accountable to be able to do that. Listen, you only get one body, and it would be, it's not good when my mind breaks down before my body, or my body breaks down before my mind. And then somebody to hold me accountable vocationally in terms of my job, in terms of my career aspirations. When I'm having to make those tough decisions on the job, who do I talk to? And then someone to hold me accountable in terms of my intellectually. What are you reading? I'm reading a book right now called The Foundation. and it's a book about the value and the secrets of foundation work and how important establishing foundations and trusts are to the health, financial health of our society and our communities. What are you reading right now? Let me throw that out as a question. Share it with your audience. You know, you've got some other friends and some people out there. Why don't you put down in the chat, what are you currently reading? And then finally, politically, which is where some of this rubber meets the road on this show. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to raise some questions politically. I'm trying to raise some issues to kind of make us go, wonder, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. So let's jump in today. Check this out. I read a study. I want to know what you think about this. I just got done reading a study that men are not working like they were 50 years ago. That the percentage of men working has declined, specifically within certain age groups. So men between the ages of 25 and 54, men between the ages of 25 and 54 are less likely to work now than they did 50 years ago. What say you about that? I grew up with this crazy work ethic. Like, people that know me and know me well know what I'm going to do is go to work. Matter of fact, I was talking to my executive assistant about that today because I was just saying to her, I said, like, I just don't have a concept around calling out, or I just don't have the concept. I don't have a concept about not working. All I know is to work because I was raised that way. I had my first job when I was 14 years old. I've been working ever since. I worked my way through college. So the study says that in 50 years ago, 96% of all men 25 to 54 were working. 50 years ago, 96% of all men from 25 years old to 54 years old worked. That number now has decreased from 96% to 86%. So there has now been a 10 percentage point drop. Men in that age category that are not working. And so I want to talk about that. Why do you think that is? Why is it that we live in a culture where men are less likely to work than they were 50 years ago? And so as I continue to read, it talks about that there's a mixture of factors. And some of the factors are positive and some of the factors are good. Let me educate you. OECD. Because a lot of times, let me tell you what you will get from me. If I give you data, if I give you a perspective on something, I'm not giving you my emotion. That's something I want you to remember about public policy and politics. You have to learn to get your emotion out of it. We have to be data-driven. We have to be fact-driven. You know, so I forget what the name of the publication was, but I was reading, so I was listening to NPR, National Public Radio on Sirius about a week or so ago. I think it was when I was doing my trip. And they talked about, like, one of the top 10 conservative news outlets has been sued because the evidence was there that they were just flat out fabricating stories. And that's what people do. They fabricate stories to get us all emotional about something. And we're emotional about something that the data just does not prove to be the case at all. So you're always going to hear things from me, and I'm be like, wait a minute, let me give you my proof. Okay, you know I'm a preacher, so when I'm preaching something, I'm going to show it to you somewhere else in the Bible. When I show it to you somewhere else in the Bible, that's called a proof text. It means that I'm not just imposing upon the scriptures something I want it to mean, but I can actually prove it means what I'm saying it means. So OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's where this data comes from. It is an international think tank. It is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It says that many men are now struggling to support themselves financially. Woohoo! You talking about a whole shift. I grew up in a culture where if a man wasn't going to do anything else, he was going to provide, right? Now we're living in a culture where men are in an increasing clip struggling to provide for themselves financially. And so we find that they're out of the workforce in a higher percentage. What say you about this? And this is the challenge. The challenge is the data says that when men are out of the workforce for a significant period of time, they experience a loss of dignity and they experience mental health challenges. So when he doesn't feel like a man that has the ability to provide, because he cannot, for whatever the reason is, we're going to talk about some of those reasons, then that man winds up with a mental health crisis, or a mental health challenge, I should say. So the issue becomes, why do you think men are not working to the degree that they used to work? This is James Gailliard. You're listening to the James Gailliard Show. I want you to go ahead and share this, like this, comment on this. I'm going to look at your comments in a little while when we take our first break. And so the issue becomes, why are men not working to the degree that they used to work? Well, the study says there's a couple of factors around the decline of men in the workforce. Tell me what you think about this. First of all, there's one good reason why, and that is because women have entered into the workforce at a much more significant percentage than they did 50 years ago. So shout out to every opportunity that's been afforded to women so that they can do all the things that are necessary for them to do. But aside from that, there are some other reasons why men are not working to the degree. One is you have more men in graduate school now than you did 50 years ago. But you also have a new dynamic of social interaction that we didn't have 50 years ago. 50 years ago, we didn't have stay-at-home dads. What say you about that? This then weaves into the high cost of childcare. And, look, just me. And look, understand something, y'all. I'm not here. This is not shade time. I'm not here throwing any shade on anybody, okay? I am telling you James Gailliard's perspective. I'm telling you my lens. Like, there is no scenario in the world by which I see myself being a stay-at-home dad. Like, there's just no scenario I can know of. If my wife was a multi-billionaire, I don't see myself being a stay-at-home dad. That's just James Gailliard. But there's a dynamic now because you have a husband and wife, and she's earning at a higher clip than he is. Child care is crazy. Child care costs are $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a month. I've seen it that high. $1,500 a month. So that by the time I put gas in the car to go to work, by the time I do all that, now it's costing us $2,500 a month between child care and just getting to work. If I only make $3,000, $36,000, $40,000 a year, and my wife is making six figures, maybe it financially makes sense. So staying at home dads is a reason. But here's another one. Caring for elderly parents. I was really blessed before my mother left here to go on to be with the Lord. I was really blessed that, I was in a position that I could continue pastoring and working at the church and really providing her the level of care that was necessary as she got older. But what about people that don't have those resources? And so now men are working at a smaller clip. There's a changing demand for the kinds of jobs. Listen, I read something recently where artificial intelligence is going to take something crazy. It's going to remove something like 50 or 60 million jobs, something crazy like that, right? So, and I got to get that exact number for y'all. And so there's also, the employment has changed around manufacturing industry. Men are less likely to be on a college campus. Listen to this. Men now account for less than half of college enrollees. Less than half of college enrollees, which could potentially affect their employment outcomes. I had a conversation today with someone around certain things you can and cannot do without a college degree, right? And so all of these things are a factor. And now what's more, it says men now account for less than half of enrollees on college campuses, which could affect employment outcomes. Among Americans aged 25 and older, the unemployment rate of people with a high school diploma is 3.9% compared to 2.2% of those whose highest educational attainment is a bachelor's degree. And that was according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let me say that in a simple way. If I have a degree, I'm less likely to be unemployed. And here's the other thing, and we talked about this at a previous show, and I want to get your feedback, and I'm going to look at your comments in a minute. The rise of incarceration rates. have made it difficult for some men to find work once they return to society. So incarcerated men aren't counted in government labor force statistics. But when they are released, their struggles to find work would weigh on the male employment rate. Let me say that again. When you are incarcerated, you are not counted in government labor force statistics as unemployed. But when you get released, you are then added to that algorithm. You're added to that calculation, which means if you have a difficulty time finding employment, that algorithm then forces up that unemployment percentage of men. So what say you? What say you? In the past, many men opted for careers in the military. That's the last reason. But the military opportunities, full-time federal government military employees have dropped from 3 million to 1.5 million. So literally in 1970, you had 3 million full-time federal government military opportunities. Now that number is down to 1.5. The bottom line is this. Men are 10% less likely to work full-time today than 50 years ago. What say you about this? When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about young voters and how they have polled. And then I want to talk about the governor's budget now that the General Assembly is back in session. This is James Gailliard. You're listening to the James Gailliard Show. Share this with somebody. I'm going to pay a bill. We'll be right back.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Pop's Diner, 132 South Church Street, Rocky Mount. Juicy burger, hot, delicious wing, yummy spaghetti, and the first pizza to ever be served downtown Rocky Mount. Hot, delicious pizza and more at Pop's Diner. Pop's Diner for hot dogs. Pop's Diner for lunch. Open daily from 11 till 7 p.m. City workers get the Pop's hookup. Pop's Diner, open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wings, pizza, burgers, spaghetti, salads, and more. Hot, fresh, and fast at Pop's downtown Rocky Mount. Open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
If you need bold banners to boost your business, but you're on a budget, think Staples. Posters, flyers, signs, and menus for less? Think Staples. Staples can print anything you need to move your business forward. Now at Staples, save $50 on your print purchase of $150 or more. Same-day service available on hundreds of items if you order by noon. And all backed by Staples' Print Perfect guarantee. So it's done right or it's printed again free. Staples, your local print and marketing expert. N61, visit staples.com/print for details.
AURN News.
I'm Jamie Jackson. The Association of Black Cardiologists has named Dr. Anthony Fletcher as its 20th president, putting the Arkansas interventional cardiologists at the forefront of the organization's efforts to reduce cardiovascular disease and increase diversity in the cardiology field. Dr. Fletcher, who practices at the CHI St. Vincent Cardiology and Medicine Clinic in Little Rock, assumes leadership of the national organization as it aims to boost awareness about heart health, advocate for more black cardiologists and researchers, and establish an endowment to fund its programs. Dr. Fletcher is a graduate of Xavier University and the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. He brings decades of experience in cardiology to his new role, helming the 2,000-member organization. The ABC was founded in 1974 and will be celebrating 50 years this November. For AURN News, I'm Jamie Jackson.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
My people, welcome back. This is James Gailliard, and this is the James Gailliard Show. In the 919, I'm at 872-9210, and in the 252-937-7400. I'm here live every Monday from 5 to 6 on Choice FM, 92.1 FM on the dial. If you're out on the FM land, I would love to know you're out there. I get a sense of some people on the Facebook account as we push this out live over there, but I don't get a sense of my radio listeners. I would love to know you're out there. This is a show where we talk a little bit about news, a little bit about pop culture, a little bit about sports, a little bit about politics, a little bit about religion. The point is we want to talk about things that make us think, and we want to talk about things that people tell us doesn't matter when they really do matter, because we're talking about the things that make our lives better. So today, we just reminded you of the importance of focusing on major things. Don't spend your time, energy, efforts on the lesser things. Focus on what matters. Don't let folks get you sidetracked. And then we talked about the importance of elders, and I left something out. Not just the importance of having people in my life to build me in certain areas, but people in my life or just making sure that I get certain exposures. I think oftentimes we don't even realize what is possible in our lives because we've not been exposed to it. And so I just want to encourage you to get out there, get outside of Raleigh, Durham, Rocky Mount, Scotland Neck, Tarboro, wherever you are. Get outside of those areas to see what is possible in your life. And then we talked about the fact that men are not working like they were 50 years ago. This is foreign to me. Why do you think? I laid down all the reasons the data says. We talked about the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and all of their research points, but what say you? What do you when you know of men between the ages of 25 and 54 that do not work? The study does also talk about disability and the rise of the number of people on disability. And how oftentimes, I shouldn't say that because there are many people on disability who legitimately should be on disability. But, hey, y'all, can we talk real on this show? We're going to talk real whether you want me to or not. Real talk, we also know there's some folk on disability that could they could take their narrow tail to work right now. You know that, right? So we have to be real about that. But disability is another reason. But what say you? Why do you think people don't work? And how important is work ethic to you? One of the things that I like to say to my young people, but anyone who will listen, you can go so far in our society if you're just willing to work hard. And I think oftentimes, even like I have pastors that come to me and, you know, they're like, man, tell me about the growth of your church or whatever. And, you know, like I'm assuming all of the spiritual stuff is in place. You know, I guess you can preach and your music is decent and you've got good structure and all of that. But sometimes, man, we just don't prosper and we're not successful because we just don't have a work ethic. We won't show up and, you know, grind at it day in and day out. I want to encourage somebody. I feel an unction. I feel a quickening, man, in studio to tell somebody, grind it out. Grind it out. That the Lord is saying, make some necessary sacrifices and work hard and watch. When my dad retired, he retired because he had to. He got furloughed, and then they eventually got rid of his jobs during the Ronald Reagan administration. Part of that trickle-down economics. So I'll tell you about trickle-down economics. It caused a lot of poor people and a lot of lower middle-class people to lose their jobs. That's what trickle-down economics did, where people were at the top were fine. So my dad and our family got caught up in those trickle-down economics of the Ronald Reagan administration in the early 80s. And but when my dad finally got let go, he got paid for it was some ridiculous amount of time. It was over a year, and it might have been like a year and a half. He got paid because he had that much sick time saved up, because he just went to work, you know. And so I just want to really encourage us about the value. You might be smart, but without a work ethic, you're just not going to get very far. And I just want to remind folk about that. I see some of y'all shouting out. I appreciate that. Ray, you are right. He said, tell them to call me if they need guidance on work ethic. Yeah, man, you have never lied. You gotta grind it out. Come on. Alvin talking about eisegesis versus exegesis. Now you're going to get me started on something, man. So shout out to everybody that's watching, listening. If you want to chime in and ask me a question or make a comment, 919-872-9210, 252-937-7400. Talking about men not working. How you feel about that? Could they live in your house not working? So just teaching our children the value of work ethic. Now, I want to shift gears, and I want to ask you, I don't have a poll to give you yet, but I want you to, and this is where, if you are in a position where you can type in something, I want you to type in a word or a part of a word if you're in a position to do that. Now, there was a poll from the Harvard Kennedy School of their Institute of Politics. They just released a poll. Now, mind you, this is of young voters 18 to 29. And most of my listening audience is probably not 18 to 29. But I want everybody. I don't just want my 18 and 29-year-olds, okay? So this is for everybody. So you know all of and I'm going to do a whole show. I know I keep promising it, but trust me, I'm going to do a whole show on the Israel-Hamas conflict. I really am. I'm going to deal with the whole Gaza Strip thing because if you're paying attention, like there are all kinds of protests around the country on college campuses. I think they either postponed or canceled USC's graduation. I know there's been a lot of drama at Columbia, schools all over the country. There is a lot of protesting going on around what's going on with Israel versus the Palestinian people. And, you know, I don't want to get into this yet because I'm going to get into it. And I think it's unfortunate when we don't recognize the right of all people to be able to exist, whoever those people are. And so I think there are some major atrocities going on of the people that are Palestinian that are just innocent bystanders in this conflict. So there's been a lot of protesting, a lot of boycotting, a lot of showing up on college campuses. And of course, if they're showing up on college campuses, that group is 18 to 29 years old. Well, Harvard does a poll to say, tell me the thing that matters most to you. What is interesting is that conflict showed up way down the line. I think it's number 15 or close to it. So I want to ask you, I'm going to read off, let me see, what number is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, it's number 15. So now I'm going to read these off real quick. What I want you to do is I want you to type in, if you're able to, tell me, or you can call real quick and just shout out the name, and then, or, you know, tell Doc. But I'm going to give him run these things off, and I want you to tell me, and I'm not going to give them in the order that they came in because that'll tell us. So these are in no special order, okay? Tell me which of these things matter the most. Education, immigration, crime, protecting democracy, corruption, jobs, women's reproductive rights, climate change, taxes, free speech, student debt, gun violence, inflation, Israel-Palestine conflict, healthcare, housing. Now, I rattle all that off. Tell me which one. Let me see what responses we get. Because everyone was saying that they assumed it was the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And the reality of it is saying exactly the opposite. And so let me see if I can see any of your comments real quick. So one more time, I'm going to read this off, and then you go ahead and give me the one thing that jumps out the most for you in terms of the thing that matters most. Healthcare, jobs, women's reproductive rights, corruption, immigration, climate change, free speech, housing, Israel-Palestine, student debt, corruption, protecting democracy, inflation. Of all those things going on, for you, what say you? What is the thing most important to you that's going on right now? I'd be curious to know what your comments are. I'm just really curious. And while you're chiming in on that, let me see what some of y'all are saying. Let me see. I normally listen to you on 92 while driving home. That's good to know, Angela. Thank you. When people get you sidetracked, the victory belongs to them. That's right. Don't get sidetracked. I think some women accept men not working and allow them to stay with them and not work. Yeah, I think that's a problem, Joanne. But that's your business, right? That's their business, I should say. And so Trina Bell, she said, no, sir. I'm not sure what the no, sir was, or something I asked. You know, what say you about all this? G. Ross said healthcare. Let me give you all, somebody else said inflation. Healthcare, inflation. That's coming from a small business owner. immigration. Sounds like a lot of number ones. Inflation, healthcare, taxes, free speech, Israel, Palestine, student debt, crime, protecting democracy, women's reproductive rights, jobs. All right, let me give them to y'all because I want to get to my main segment. And let me see who else is saying what. So this is the order. The number one thing, and I feel like inflation and jobs kind of go together for me, but they did poll them separately. The number one, she got it. Chiquita got it. The number one, inflation. Inflation was number one. Number two was healthcare. Number three, housing. Followed by gun violence. Followed by jobs. Followed by women's reproductive rights. Followed by corruption. Followed by protecting democracy. Followed by education. Followed by immigration. And then crime, climate change, taxes. 14 is free speech. 15, Israel-Palestine conflict. And check this out. Jeff Mobley says student debt. Jeff, guess what? That's the last thing. The thing least important to 18 to 29-year-old people polled was student debt. It was the least important thing. The most important thing was inflation, and then healthcare and housing. And so very interesting. Here's my point to this. My point to all of this is that I want us to be more watchful. And I want us as a family, because we're becoming a family, I want us to be more discerning. And I want us to make sure that just because the wheel is squeaking doesn't mean it has to get the oil. That just because somebody is making a lot of noise about something, because what I'm learning is that sometimes people will create a fake, just a fake, I got a caller. Let me see who's there, Doc. Who I got? Hey there, this is James Gailliard and James Gailliard Show. Can you turn your radio down? Who am I talking to?
Who am I talking to? I'm good.
Hey there, who am I talking to?
Elder Leon Wright, sir. How are you?
I'm well. Hope you are. Did you have a comment about the show today?
Yes, sir. You mentioned many items of your listing. I heard all of them. It seemed like close to 20 items, except for one, thermonuclear war, and we're on the brink of it. And I believe that's one of the choices that's worth talking about.
Thermonuclear war. I appreciate that. And if I did not, I don't know if that would fall under the climate change category or not, but thermonuclear war. We will put that on the list to talk about, and I appreciate the call today, sir. Appreciate you for calling in. So, family, I want to, who else is out there? We hear gun violence, healthcare, let me see, protecting democracy. We need to be talking about that. Education is most important to help with gaining of knowledge in order to process. So here's the point that I want to lift up, y'all. The point that I want to lift up is I want us to be cautious that we don't allow media to dictate what we think is most important. I think because we could have a small segment of our society focused in on some minor issues, or it could be, when I say minor issues, let me rephrase that. I don't mean that the issue is minor. I mean that a minority number of people have that as the most pressing thing. So, for one person who believes what they believe, that's the most important thing to them. And I'm not going to minimize that. What I'm saying is that when 1,000 people believe one way and you believe a different way, then it might be that some of those other issues might be greater issues. And so I want to encourage us to be cautious as we are kind of weighing in. And what would be helpful for me is let me know what you really want me to dedicate showtime to. I'm happy to talk. If inflation is number one, I'm going to talk about inflation. As a matter of fact, what a great segue, because I'm going to deal with inflation and education right now together. And because this is our last segment today, the government, so the General Assembly is back in session. This is James Gailliard. You're watching or listening to James Gailliard's show right here on Choice 92.1 FM. I'm on Facebook. I'm on 92.1. Please go ahead and share this with somebody. here's our last segment. So segment 1 is They Said What? Which is always about what your man or woman of God said. Segment 2 is always about since we've been together again and what has happened in the last week. And then we get into some of the other issues. And so today, our segment 3 had to do with the fact that men are not working like they did 50 years ago. And then segment 4 had to do with a poll from Harvard Kennedy School of Politics about what are the most pressing issues for 18 to 29-year-olds. And so here's where I want to end today. Where I want to end today is the North Carolina General Assembly is back in session. This is called their short session. Every even number year is a short session. That simply means they're going to get in and get out as quickly as possible. Their odd number years are their long session years. When I was in the General Assembly, we had long session years that literally went over longer than a year. I mean, we were supposed to get out in 6 months and we might be in there for 13, 14, 15 months. It was crazy. So they come back in the short session and there's going to be some changes to the budget. There's going to be, we haven't spent all of our money. There's still a surplus. I don't like saying there's a surplus. Surplus says there's nothing else for me to spend on when I have all this money left over. And so we don't have a surplus because there are things that we won't spend money on that we need to be spending money. So let me give you an example. For your household budget, let's say you had $1,000 left over at the end of the month. Well, if you still had to pay your utility bill and your utility bill was $550, you don't have a surplus, right? A surplus is I have done everything I am required to do, and this is what I have left over. So the reason, don't believe it, do not believe it when our elected officials tell you that there is a surplus of dollars in the state coffers. Do not believe that. We do not have a surplus, right? Because there are things that we are deliberately not funding. So because we still have plenty of money left over, when they come back in the short session, there is discussion and debate about how to spend that money. So the governor then will then submit a budget. Now, remind you, the governor doesn't have any money to spend, right? The money is really spent by the General Assembly. But the governor will advocate because he or she, in this case, has the ability to either veto or assign. The government can either veto any legislation, meaning that he rejects it. He can sign that legislation, which means I fully support it, or he or she can do nothing with it and let it become law without his endorsement, which is basically his way of saying, I'm not loving this, but I'm not going to fight this. I'm just going to let it become law on its own. So because of that, the governor then will meet. If he's a Democrat, he'll meet with Democratic legislators and meet with lobbyists. He'll meet with stakeholders, and they'll determine, okay, what would we like to see in the money that was spent? If he was Republican, he would do the same thing with Republicans. Whoever's in charge, in this case, is Republicans in the General Assembly. They'll begin crafting what this additional budget items are going to be. So the Governor Roy Cooper, this week released his budget. And I want to lay out some things in his budget, and I want to know what you think about them. And I want us to talk a little bit about them together. And so the governor's budget will, first of all, invest $1 billion in North Carolina's public schools. The argument is, and as you know, I talk a lot on this show about public education. The argument is when we invest in public education, I agree with this, it fuels economic growth. When we invest in education, it attracts businesses. When we invest in education, it helps us build the workforce necessary so that we can continue to attract new jobs and new companies that will invest here. Also, when we invest in public schools, it positions students to thrive both now and in the future, right? And so the governor is proposing that voters would approve a $2.5 billion school construction bond for new schools and to repair aging buildings. This is a big deal. I mean, so this will be a $2.5 billion bond referendum to be able to get some new schools built. I think we all know the horrible shape schools are in. Now, I don't know. I struggle a little bit with this. Now, as you know, I'm a straight talker here. Y'all know that. And so, because I want to give everyone a fair chance, but I also want to share my perspective on things. So I do think we need to build some schools. I do think we have a situation like we have in Edgecombe County where we have an influx of students that are being demerged out of Nash County schools. And quite frankly, we just don't have a suitable high school for them, and we need to fix that. So I do think there are, by exception, there are some exceptions that, yes, we have to build schools. But what I want us to be careful about is to, look, listen, you can give me a school with a great principal, a great assistant principal, a really gifted teacher in every classroom, the proper support personnel, nurses, counselors, everything necessary. I will take that group of people in a subpar building any day, all day, before I would take a shiny new building that doesn't have a principal, doesn't have an assistant principal, doesn't have a quality teacher in every class. So I say that because I don't want us assuming that building a school is the answer to everything, because it's not. We didn't have air conditioning. I graduated from college without air conditioning. I didn't have air conditioning in my dorm. So I think we have to be cautious about it. But I do know there are situations we need to repair schools and we need to build some new schools. And I'm not saying that the buildings don't matter. I am saying, though, that unless they pose some kind of health threat, which is a whole nother conversation, that I really want to see us focus on teachers and principals, et cetera. Which takes me to the next point of the governor's budget. The next part of the budget is Governor Cooper's budget is to give teachers an 8.5% raise. What say you? What say you? Do teachers deserve an 8.5% raise? I'm holding my hand up saying they absolutely deserve an 8.5% raise. This would also, what do you think about this? This would lift starting teacher salaries to more than $47,500 a year. I still don't think that's enough, because that $47,500 includes local and state supplements, but it would make it amongst the highest in the Southeast, so southeastern part of the country. But when you've got, and I don't want to get into a big comparison here, but if law enforcement can start, in the $50,000, $60,000 range, we need to have teachers there. I just don't understand the logic here. I mean, we need to pay teachers more. Now, let me be really clear. There's some crummy teachers out here. But what about the ones that are great? And I think the average one is great. And I think it's hard, man, to teach children when half the school year they have an interim, a substitute for half the year, and they don't have a permanent science teacher or whatever the case is. Now, here's where it gets tricky. It places a moratorium on tax-funded private school vouchers. And he's specific. The private school vouchers, that's private schools that lack accountability, and reprioritizes that money back to funding public schools. I'm going to put a pin in that. And I'm going to come out and pull that pin out when I come back from this last break. This is James Gailliard. You are listening and watching The James Gailliard Show. I'll be right back.
On Choice FM.
O'Reilly. When you need auto parts, O'ReillyAuto.com is just a few clicks away. We offer convenient options for you to get your parts quickly. Order online and pick up for free at your local O'Reilly Auto Parts store. We'll even bring it out curbside. Or you can have your parts delivered right to your door with free shipping on most orders over $35. Visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. Pop's Diner, 132 South Church Street, Rocky Mount. Juicy burger, hot, delicious wing, yummy spaghetti, and the first pizza to ever be served downtown Rocky Mount. Hot, delicious pizza and more at Pop's Diner. Pop's Diner for hot dogs. Pop's Diner for lunch. Open daily from 11 till 7 p.m. City workers get the Pop's hookup. Pop's Diner. Open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wings, pizza, burgers, spaghetti, salads, and more. Hot, fresh, and fast at Pop's downtown Rocky Mount. Open 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
Man, this hour goes so fast, it's wild. And so we're shouting, we're talking about the governor's recommendation to the budget. This is what he's going to recommend to the General Assembly. Let me be really clear here. I think he has a snowball's chance in hell for it happening, but, you know, that's just me talking. I could be wrong. I like the thought of teachers getting an 8.5% raise. I love the thought of lifting starting teachers' salaries. And this is where I get my hate mail from. I like the thought of a moratorium. That means we no longer keep taking taxpayer dollars to fund private schools that lack accountability. You know, I think that, and y'all have heard me say this before, like people think I'm just anti-vouchers. I'm really not. I'm anti-inequity. I'm anti-giving dollars to people and not holding them accountable. I'm anti-destroying a system and giving the resources to another system. I'm anti-not fighting for all children. That's what I'm anti. So let me say this to you. From a per pupil funding perspective, that's the amount of money each student gets. If you went to a traditional public school since 2020, so from 2020 to now, per pupil funding has increased by $463 on average. I need you to listen to me. $463, 6.5%. During that same period, private school funding for vouchers, now I said traditional public schools, 6.5%. Private school vouchers increased 80.7%. So traditional public schools increased $463. Vouchers for private schools increased $3,390. Now, here's the kick. The consumer price index, inflation, if you will, is up 20%. So per pupil funding went up 6.5% in an economy that things cost 20% more. So in essence, we've lost ground to inflation in public schools. But meanwhile, that 20% increase was there, but private school funding went up 80%. So it 4 times was greater than the inflation at that period. So this is why the governor's like, hey, pump the brakes. We need to do right by the traditional public school that the average student is going to. So that's part of his budget increase. And then, so what say you about some of these things, y'all? I do think I'm in agreement. Says I believe the majority of teachers are great. I agree with you. I work with an amazing kindergarten teacher. I'm going to talk about that. Bronson, what's up, man? I agree with your assessment about the proposal from the governor. I'm sure. So you know, he has to do it, and we'll fight for whatever crumbs we can get out of this. There's another portion of it, and that is he's recommending the strengthening of child care and early education for working families. So listen to this. The governor's budget recognizes the need for, and this is, everybody on this call should be able to agree with this, strong, accessible, and affordable child care and early childhood education options for working families. Listen, you can't, I'm so sick of people talking about these new jobs coming because there's some things that are associated with these new jobs that if you don't also talk about them, you might as well not even have the new job. And those two things, and I'm sure there are others, is transportation and child care. It doesn't matter if we add 500 jobs down the street if, first of all, nobody can get to them. And second of all, if nobody can watch my child so I can go to work. Or if somebody can watch my child so I can go to work, but I can't afford it, and it winds up making it, you know, it takes so much of my income that I might as well not be at work at all. So the governor's budget is recognizing that we've got to fix this problem. The reason I'm raising this is because we are in an election cycle. These are the things we need to be talking about. We're getting all emotional about stuff that will never hit our home, that will never hit our community. And the reality of it is these are the kinds of conversations we need to have. So the governor's recommendation is to invest $745 million in child care and early childhood education, which would include $200 million for child care stabilization grants. Those stabilization grants would keep child care centers open. They are closing like crazy. First of all, you can't even get people to work in them because we pay them so poorly. You know, we have an Impact Academy here at Word Tabernacle, and we were taking 3 to 5-year-olds, and we decided, hey, we're going to start opening up for infants and toddlers. The moment we announced it, we wound up 25, 30 kids on the waiting list. The moment we announced it, you know, we just recently became a North Carolina pre-K site. And I see firsthand parents are struggling for this. And so we've got to keep child care centers open. We've got to make sure they're good places for children to learn. And then he says $128.5 million for child care subsidies that would increase access to high-quality child care, particularly in our rural and lower wealth communities. And so there's more I want to say about this, but I'm about to be out of time. I want to encourage us to pay attention to these kinds of issues, the things that matter. You know, as usual, I'm out of time, but I'm not out of talk. I'm out of clock, but I'm not out of content. And I want to just encourage us to really get plugged into issues that matter. And don't be afraid to talk about the issues that are going to propel and move our community forward. Let me say this in closing today, family. You know, up the street from us is Firestone. Bridgestone, Firestone, right? They make tires. And the reality of it is they have this sophisticated process to make tires, and they've got quality assurance, and they got people to check the tires and all of this. Regardless of how good their system is, if in the beginning of the process, the rubber that they use is defective, if it is bad, despite how good the system might be after that, at the end of it, you're going to have a defective tire in some regards. Now, that's a crude way of viewing early childhood education. If that child starts kindergarten behind, sight words, socialization, whatever the case is, even if we put them in a great kindergarten program or a great first grade program, if they enter in behind, despite how good the system may be, they're still going to struggle to come out on the other side good. And so we need to advocate strong, family, for early childhood education, for the significance of North Carolina pre-K programs, and making sure that we're stabilizing our child care centers. If you know I'm right, type in, I know you're right. Listen, I appreciate you. I'm James Gailliard. This is the James Gailliard Show. I'll see you back next Monday at 5 o'clock. In the meantime, share this show with somebody. Send me a shout out. Let me know what you want to talk about. Peace. Have a great night.
The James Gailliard Show on Choice FM.
This is
WRSV, Elm City.
Turn Up.
Choice FM.